Um, check, 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 check. 1 2 1 2. What's up? What's up? That was a good beginning. A fake out. Present share screen. Think I might draw a little bit of this page, see if people come in here. We can talk about some stuff. I'm watching my brother's dog. See if I can show you guys. Can you see Bear? Where's Bear? She hid behind the couch. She's around. She exists. It's good. All right, this is I'll do the cartoony version first and then make it realistic after that. Because this angle can be hard to draw. But the shoulder blade, booby. Richard Cahill. What's up, man? What's up? It says you and me, Richard Cahill. It says one person watching it. That's you. Ballers is going to their Christmas show. They got like 900 people watching. Then you flip the canvas. I'm trying to draw it traditional more, and you can't flip the canvas with traditional. So it's not even like a bad habit. It's a good habit, but you can't. With traditional, you can hold it up to the light, and then you can kind of flip it and just check it that way. A lot of tricks you can't really do with. So her ear would be like right here about. This is the character. She's got. She's got kind of the dominatrix ski mask. She's got some hair hangs down. Do we want shit? Drawing like this hair, whereas like this kind of pompadour-y hair from that angle is hard. I've been still going down some rabbit holes with Norse, Gaelic, Celtic mythology, all that stuff. Let's go already, says Howdy. That stuff, it's all like kind of similar, and they have like similar versions of each story. And a lot of that stuff got repurposed. And then I think they're saying this term Christianization, but a lot of stuff gets like kind of repurposed after Christianity, and um, that's like they're saying with Loki. Like Loki was a good guy until a lot of the stories where he's a bad guy are like after Christianization, and then it's sort of like it's a little bit like history written by the winners kind of thing. It's like the historians were Christian, so they're just they're like preserving the stories, but they're not really like preserving like the religious stuff, and they're kind of like character assassinating certain people. But Loki, maybe that might have happened to him. But he's like Norse, and Norse is like a little bit more common, like a little bit more like known about. It gets shit gets a lot more weird if you get into like Celtic stuff. And I think all those people, definitely Celtic, they did like human sacrifice and cannibalism and stuff like that. I was thinking too, they have like rituals, and the rituals come up in like the legends. And I was like, there might be a finite amount of rituals. With like, there's one of them that they mentioned was the blood oath is like a ritual, and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Another one is like a human sacrifice or just a sacrifice. One is like to be anointed king is like a ritual. So I kind of want to like try and make lists of all the rituals. There could be one that they got for like, well, then there's things you want from the ritual. Like you want your crops to do well. One that kind of gets they make video games of is you want like to bring forth a child that will be like the son of a god or something like that. So then that kind of ritual obviously involves like sex basically. So there's like that's like sex magic or sex rituals. There's yeah, because some of this, the reason I'm kind of Sark, what's up? The reason I'm like going down these rabbit holes is because it is like some of the origins of King Arthur stuff comes from all this stuff. And King Arthur, they kind of added in the Christianity later too. Um, and I think I might have like there's the movie The Wicker Man. Like that's like so I'm getting Gaelic mixed up with well Gaelic, Welsh, and Celtic. I don't know if they're all the same, but it's all like pretty similar. But it's one of those. It might be Gaelic is Wicker Man, and that's one where they do an actual human sacrifice on a dude, and it's pretty creepy. That movie's pretty awesome though. But yeah, their festival is funny. It's like kind of like a parade in masks, and it's like pretty simple. I'm like, is that kind of what it was? Because there was a movie that was okay. I actually didn't finish it, but it was called Babylon, and they showed an old 1920s style Hollywood party, but like without they kind of modernized it, or like they just made it authentic, but then didn't censor it at all. So it's like definitely like coked out, lots of like sex in the corners, almost like borderline an orgy. They got elephants in the room, like crazy shit. People are dancing, throwing shit around. There's like confetti everywhere. And I was like, that's kind of cool how chaotic it is. Like that would be cool if there was a ritual kind of like that. And I don't know what it'd be like, just a ritual basically being like a party. Like if like a solstice kind of celebration type thing would just be a party. When I visited Mexico, it was a little bit like that. It was like the streets were so thick that you couldn't even tell really what's going on. But it wasn't a ritual, but it was like a solstice party. That was for like Day of the Dead or whatever. Actually, that one wasn't even for Day of the Dead. It's for something else. Um, but Day of the Dead is like that too. Uh, so yeah, if it comes up in my story that there'll be like this big festival, and that will be kind of like an opportunity for to assassinate the king or whatever. Trying to think though, I don't even know because I was like, would the king even go out in public like that? They do that kind of plot in Inglorious Bastards, where they get the chance to kill Hitler because he's going to attend the screening of a new show, of a new like propaganda movie. That's kind of like you got to have like the cool reason why the king would like venture out publicly. Well, the other thing is like if it's not public. So I think I might go that route. Like that's a little bit more like Eyes Wide Shut style. Like the king's going to be at this super secret party, festival party orgy thing, and there's one kind of group of people that get to go, but they have to go blindfolded, blah blah blah, and they're the ones who are going to make the assassination attempt. Um, but yes, when I hear some of these like legends of a lot of them are pretty dope. It seems like so far, like the Norse stuff. Um, Sometimes like because I was thinking like if you go back really far, it's almost like the stories get kind of less good. They get kind of weird, and you're like, what was even the point of that story? But some of the ways that they're weird can be cool. But I have these 3 books of fairy tales, and it is funny. Like there's a sprinkling of Native American, like North American Native American fairy tales, and those ones I kind of don't like. Those ones like make absolutely no sense. They have no point really, and they're kind of weird. And then there's like ones from like the Middle East that are like they're kind of the best basically. And then but I'm like maybe up in the north, where like the freaking barbarians were killing people and stuff. They have super legit stories. But it made me wonder too, like it's like if Celtic and Gaelic, Norse, all these people they did do human sacrifice, like that, that was something that I was in my head putting them above like the Aztecs or whatever. And so it makes me curious about the Aztecs. Like, did they have like kind of badass mythology? And the more you look into it, it's like there's a lot of overlap basically. But I'm like, there's a ton of overlap in that Northern Europe region. But I'm like, there might even be overlap straight up with freaking everywhere you go, you find these like mythologies. I guess that's kind of part of do they call it like the monomyth? Is like the savior born of a virgin and the giant flood, and I don't know, something like that. Narwhal, greetings and salutations from Vallejo, California. Thanks, Ken Jackman. Richard Cahill, Eyes Wide Shut is an overlooked Christmas movie. You're right. That's funny. Yeah, I like that movie a lot. The movie's sweet. Dale A. Aztecs had pretty sweet mythology, but I prefer the Incas. Yeah, like Inca Aztec. That shit is that could be something that is like the last time that kind of peaked as being super legit. It actually didn't quite take, it didn't take. And it was in 2008. It was when Mel Gibson made Apocalypto. And that was like one of my favorite movies, one of the best movies of that decade. And it's so cool, such a sweet movie. But there wasn't like it wasn't like a Tarantino type thing where then it was so successful that everyone's like, oh, we need more like stories about Aztecs and Incas. And that one's cool too because it's not even like, and here's like the story. Here's John Smith and Pocahontas, blah blah blah. It's like, no, this is just the freaking Aztecs we're talking about, just doing their thing. That could be something that could catch on sooner or later. More stories of those kind of things. Jetta Jago, what's up? Is there Ken Jackman says, is there a king? Then being a socialite is part of being a royal. They often leave their country of origin to attend the social events. Sometime during transit or arrival would be a perfect time to get, yeah, like assassinated. Yeah, I was thinking sometimes too, yeah, even like if you have to kind of take care of a visitor and be polite to a visitor, that's kind of always actually kind of good starting ground for stories. It's like usually the starting ground you're trying to start with the task at hand, and then that escalates into like an actual kind of problem. And today I was writing a little bit, and it's like you can always start with mystery where you don't know what's going on, and then but it's kind of like some tension, some paranoia, like what is going on? Is something bad going on? And then you can reveal what's going on. So at that point, it's suspense. So you can hit mystery. You can't flow from suspense to mystery, but you can flow from mystery to suspense. So it's like maybe that's. I mean, because you almost make a rule to say like that's always how you should do it. I noticed that's how all the old Star Trek shows they all do that. They hit the beginning, task at hand, then mystery, then suspense, and then you have your action at the end. Because at the point of suspense, once it's actually been revealed what's going on, then people from there actually like start, then the action begins or whatever. NTM, what's up, Noah? Cahill, Jetojaga. Yeah, so anyways, just thinking about some of the mythology stuff. It's funny though, it's like it is fun tapping into the new a pretty huge thing. Like I know a lot of people can kind of get into it, but I feel like that might happen younger for a lot of people getting into like some Celtic, Welsh, Gaelic, Norse type like mythology stuff. Um, and as soon as you dip into it, you're like, oh, but the for me the definite what is it called, the gateway drug? It was the King Arthur legend, which I just didn't know. But I've already said this, but that was like originally that was originally pre-Christian. That's actually what's cool about this story because it's weird because like it doesn't even feel like it takes place in Britain when they tell the story. It feels like it takes place like in like Lord of the Rings or whatever, like just some weird fantasy land. You're like, this is this even Britain? What's even going on? And then but then later on they added some of the Christian stuff, which is a little bit more like quote unquote modern. It's like 2,000 years old as opposed to like whatever, like 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 years old. I don't know. Some of the stuff beginning way long ago. So you're kind of mixing like the new with the old in a way that like sort of doesn't quite make sense. It's almost like the Holy Grail, which is the cup that Jesus drank from at during the Last Supper. It's like that existed before Jesus even appeared on the earth. Is like kind of what it means, and it kind of like plays with time. And Merlin can time travel. Like that story kind of does play with time, and the Bible kind of plays with time because part of when Jesus dies for everyone's sins, that's like a weird like they say like we experience time as a straight line from beginning to end, but that's not how it actually is. Like you could just easily conceptualize it as like if you're like looking at a rope, you could perceive the whole rope all at once anyway. Um and burning it like a wick of a bomb or whatever, that's how we do it. That's not how it necessarily has to be done. And like so at the point when Jesus dies for our sins, he's not doing it at that point that the wick is burning on the bomb. He does it for the whole rope all at once. And how he does that is like kind of mind blowing. You don't exactly. It's like sci-fi. It starts to get into like sci-fi shit. Barry's here, my brother's dog. Jetajaga. I think there's some American Indian tribes that still speak Mayan. That's cool. It's yeah, Aztecs, Incas, and Mayan. The three. I kind of forgot about that. I'm telling you, that it's not that much research that to like till the juices start flowing. And the thing too, for a while, it was holding me back just a little bit, where I was like, oh, I don't want to like accidentally like do it wrong, like piss off historians or whatever. But then I was like, wait a minute, Camelot is supposedly a city made entirely of gold, and it's gone now. I'm like, Camelot is uh, what it is. What's the underwater city one? Um, the yeah, Atlantis. Camelot is like basically like the same category of city as Atlantis. And there's other ones too, like the ones like that they talk about uh with the archaeology, go backly techie, like the pre super duper early stuff. It gets back to the point where part of the conspiracy theory is like, did we regress at some point? Did we like have kind of a lot of going on like technology wise, and then somehow something happened and then we kind of regressed and started over. It's like, and Atlantis is like that, Gobekli Tepe, all that. I'm like, Camelot is definitely like that. And once you kind of frame it like that, it's like you don't need to worry too much about like being authentic for the historians, getting shit right the way it was or whatever. I'm like, no, this is a city made of gold that disappeared to time. The thing that's come up a little bit from researching some of this stuff too is like I get the feeling that it's just an interesting concept that It's with the Druids is where part of where this comes up is like, so the Druids and they're like Celtic, I think, but they were like the religious class for the whole Celtic mythology, and they wore robes and stuff, and they're kind of what you might imagine. They had like a giant staff, and they were like, kind of badass dudes or whatever. They're the Druids, but they never wrote anything down. And I'm like, they could have written something down if they wanted to, but they didn't want to. Like, that's like a big deal to them that they do not want information to pass down in writing. That kind of goes with the alchemists. It's like the alchemists, they would write stuff down, but they would code it and they would just write down the bullshit. So you couldn't get anything useful if you read anything they write, really. But the only way you can get the useful stuff is by like actually like talking to someone, have them actually trust you and actually pass the shit down or whatever. But that's kind of outside the box. That's like hard to relate to today. Everyone is pursuing. They really want to stand the test of time. They really want all their stuff to like be passed on to multiple generations or whatever. And I'm like, the other option is that people are not into that, like the Druids or whatever. And I think that's part of Camelot is they're trying to. Barry, what are you doing? Barry. They're holding, um, they're trying to hold the information in the one spot, which has a little bit. That's like almost a little bit like time travel too. Like it's just in like the Disney movie where Merlin time travels. Barry, you're gonna stop soon. Bear, Bear. One second. Skip Edwards, what's up, man? I'm watching my brother's dog. Lobo Vicious. How about the bloodline trope? Yeah, that's a little bit in the Arthur. Roots, force, midgets. Billy, what are you doing? Billy, stop. Bear. Wolf. Some people theorize Mexico City during the Aztec Empire may have been what travelers referred to as Atlantis. Oh, that's kind of cool. Druids forced midgets to dance around Stonehenge. I'm glad you said that. I'm definitely going to try and put midgets in my comic now that you said that, Richard. I'm going to write that down. Got to put midgets. Because I've been trying to think, like, what would the ritual be? Like, I want it to be kind of fun, kind of like quote unquote cinematic. Like, you throw some shit at the wall. But I had one already, it came up in the comic, is like, now I might change it, but it was like they had to run through a kind of ritual and that was in like a building, and they're just kind of passing through and they kind of see it in the background. And I was like, it was like a naked, it was kind of like a marriage, but it was like a marriage with the idea of passing on the genealogy bloodline stuff right then and there. So it'd be like a public marriage and public screwing basically, but they leave before any of that starts. But then I was thinking I might have to take it out because like shit, that's already like those people are too like intrigue a little bit. You're like, what? They're like forcing them to like do it publicly. Why are they doing that? Like, who are they? Why are they so special? And like, that's not what the story's about, though. That something like that could happen to one of the main characters later, but I can't just have it in the background. That's the way kind of first drafts go, though. You get these things that come up, and like you cut them later, but they're still there. They're still like on the cutting room floor. You can still do something with it later. Lubovicious. Hobbit and dwarves are lovely names for midges. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It is used a lot of different stories. What if your little people in your comic are really tiny, like the Bowers, and those little fellows from the Wee Willow. That would be just another comic. For this one, it's weird because it is striking a weird balance. It's got to be like kind of real. Like Merlin actually isn't even in this story. If it is like a timeline of like, this is not necessarily an uncommon thing, but they do the timeline of like the time of magic is ending. The time of magic ended. Goodbye. It's kind of like that. So then once it's gone, then you're in kind of a new era. But I was going to say the Disney movie has Merlin time traveling, and I was like, I wonder if some of his time traveling, like he kind of got the info on all that. He's like, okay, I know kind of when magic's gonna die. This is what's gonna happen. And he's like, it's kind of interesting the future, but these people do not deserve magic. And so he kind of goes about it that way. And he like would deliberately almost perpetuate the secret stopping of magic being passed down or whatever. Which like if that's even in my story, it's like kind of way in the background. But I can't really have super tiny people like the borrowers because it's like I can't have dragons, can't have anything like that. But it's not the other thing. It's not like is it's not like Game of Thrones either. It's not like armies and stuff. If any like thing, it's a little bit like a spy thriller is like what the sort of genre is. And some other kind of weird stuff thrown in there. But yeah, I was writing it today. I'm up to 100 pages on it, and it's it's not even it's a little bit past halfway done. So it's going to be like 160, 180 pages, which is like that's about as long as like Braveheart or something like a 3-hour movie, but not epic. Sometimes it's funny. I was like, I would like to do an epic thing one day, but I kind of like stressing like not epic. The second you start doing epic, then you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's like they have a big battle. They raise an army, have a big battle. You have characters you like, characters you don't like. Raise an army, have a big battle. Whatever. That's not as fun as um and Lord of the Rings will do both. Like they have the big battles, but it's really fun. Like I think some of the funnest part of Lord of the Rings is the first book when they're like hiding from the wraiths, when they have to go like under the into the dwarven mines and they have to fight the cave troll. Like that stuff that's kind of like not epic, but it's more like a horror movie. Almost a lot of that stuff is super cool. Deli says, "Wow, big script." Yeah, that it'll be my biggest. Yeah, and if you turn that into a comic, it'll be 400 pages, which like Earthbound was like two. What was it? It was like 260. Earthbound Grand Prix will be like 300. So this will be 400. So it'll be even. It'll be quite long. Um, Beastmen, Lizardmen, definitely people like people dressing up as animals. That's good. That goes with some of the pagan type stuff. The one that they were talking about is there's a guy. Oh shoot, I can't even think of his name right now. But he's like the Odin, but he's more on the other side. He's from the Celtic side, and his deal. They said they called him the Horseman, but they think way early versions of him he was just a horse, and then later on he was called like he would always have antlers. And as soon as you say that to him, like, wow, that's like comes up in a lot of stuff. Like Studio Ghibli, um, Princess Mononoke has like the giant antlered god of the forest. And like, yeah, the main god is it's not like it's like their version of a horse almost is like what the main god of the whole land is. I wonder if Miyazaki did any research and took inspiration from Celtic shit for that, or if it just overlaps with any of the mythologies. But sometimes too, uh, if you just like try and think of it yourself, you're gonna think of some similar stuff. That's kind of why I was thinking like, oh, maybe if I just try and invent the idea of trying to invent my own pagan ritual to put into my comic. It seems like a fun idea, but then you just like, yeah, you don't want it to be inauthentic. You don't want it to be too cheesy or weird or whatever, too try hard. Um, but one of the things that has kind of centered me and helped me is like, oh, it's like the purpose of the rituals. There's a kind of a limited number of purposes. Like it's like the blood oath. We need to make sure the crops are good. Like marriage is a ritual. Like we have rituals in our culture. Um, Graduation is a ritual. So there's things you do. Anointing a king is one from back in the day. It's a ritual. But it kind of a funny one is the blood oath, like blood brothers, because that's like comes up. Some of it, yeah. When as soon as you say it, you're like, oh, it comes up a lot in like stories. Not so much real life, but actually, I think I did get drunk and do blood brother shit with my friends at one point. We're like, yeah, let's just like cut our arms and touch our bloody arms together. Then we're like blood brothers. Yeah. Jetto Jaga. Just rewatched the G.I. Joe cartoons from the 80s, and Destro had a clan in Scotland where they all wore animal beards and worshipped an octopus in a pit of lava. Dude, see, that's sick. They kind of made, I'm pretty sure that feels like they made it up. But yeah, it's like you put it in Scotland. It's like, yeah, dude, that shit's first off, nobody knows. That's what they all say too. Everyone kind of admits, like, okay, first thing is none of them wrote anything down, so we don't know shit. But here's what we do kind of know. A lot of what they know is from uh it's from Roman dudes uh writing about them. And that's all they got. And they're like, this is like propaganda of the enemy. It's making them look bad. But I don't know. Narwhal, it doesn't have to be too over the top if the way in which you want to use magic is very simple and matter. It could be as simple as cutting your hand and dripping blood on an altar. Yeah, yeah, there'll be something like that in the ritual, maybe. In my comic, it's the Holy Grail is kind of the main thing, and that's basically because I do think about like what they call like magic systems, but that's like every power of the X-Men is a magic system. And if you put all the powers together, it's like a magic matrix almost. And like Pokemon is kind of a magic system. A lot of like manga does it. And you can call it whatever you want, but a good thing to call it is like a magic system. It's like Full Metal Alchemist, but it'll have rules. And Full Metal Alchemist is actually pretty simple. That one is like a very simple rule, the one rule, and then the whole thing is kind of built around that. And that's more what I like to do rather than like the X-Men way where it's all crazy, or like One Piece too, which is One Piece is kind of awesome, but it's a little bit more like X-Men. It's like, but the main thing you want to do is you introduce the rules and then you have the rules play out in ways that you wouldn't have guessed or foreseen. And X-Men will even do that, or like they'll combo or whatever in ways you can't foresee. Like just even like what is it, the speedball or whatever. Speedball is when you like do coke and heroin at the same time or something. But that's what when Colossus throws Wolverine, that's the speedball special. He throws him right into someone's nose and he slices him up from the inside of their nose, and that's the Wolverine speedball special. But that combination is like part of the fun. But anyway, so that's in like hotel stories like that. We like introduce. There's a few special rules, and they have to play out in every possible fun way that you can think of. And the Holy Grail is like that too. But what one kind of cool thing about the Holy Grail is it's just there's a couple little things it does, but the main thing it does is heal people. And there's questions that come up too, like, okay, so how does it heal people? And you're like, well, it's the holy water from within the Grail. You pour it on the wound, and then it heals the wound. That's like the idea. But then the question comes up, like, okay, how much water for how big a wound? Like that's kind of an interesting question. And but the main thing is if you have something healing someone where that's the power, you'd be surprised how many ways that can play out. Like one of the ones that I'm like, oh, as soon as I think of them, I'll write them down, kind of, or take note. Like I should put this in because this is an iteration of that power that people might not think of at first. It's a fun way to have it come up. But one of them, just kind of a random one, is there should definitely be like a horse that gets healed by the Grail too. Like a horse gets fucking worked and it's like dying, and so I think it's gonna be Percival's horse, you know. Um, and they don't know if the Grail will work on a horse or not, but I still haven't written that. Like maybe it won't. They would definitely try though. Um, and it would be sad if it didn't. It'd be like, fuck you, God, you didn't save the horse. And God does fuck with Percival, so Percival would be so pissed if he would know. He'd be like, it's not gonna work. They're like, we still have to try. He's like, you don't understand. God hates me. But he's like, I'm not even sure if it's God behind the Grail at this point. He's like super jaded. Japanese works make trolls and goblins over the top rapey. Yeah, that's funny. I would have a morality, a rule of behavior that dictates how powerful you are in the magic. Yeah, that's cool. That's almost maybe a little bit like, I mean, I'm just trying to think of stuff that's like is like uh, even like the Jedi is like a little bit like that. Um, Ryan Palmer, what's up, man? I dated a girl who wanted me to spit in her mouth. Did I do a Celtic ritual? Yeah, I feel like that could almost be like that. For reals though, that's hilarious. See, I might write that one down too. They can get weird. That the one that was one of the cooler things about the Northmen was they showed some of those rituals. There was one, and it was just the rite of passage for a young man or young boy to become a young man, and it's the king did it with his son, but they had to basically take magic mushrooms and go into a tent with a medicine man type dude and like scream and just scream a bunch, hell at the moon, all that kind of stuff. That was pretty cool. I think that movie might have showed a human sacrifice too, but I'm trying to remember. They did some stuff with it. They did like a marriage. Yeah, I think they had like a slave and the side they just pull up the slave and kill him. It's like, damn. Part of another big ritual is funerals, and that's big in all all this pagan stuff too. They deal with it all a special way. They all have a concept of the underworld too. They sometimes have concepts that like you can go back, you can go to the underworld and steal back people who are already dead or whatever. Which is kind of cool. Uh, Tedder Jacket. There was also an episode where Storm Shadow found Excalibur and started wrecking shit. That's cool. That angle on GI Joe is hilarious. I feel like I could write that, or like if I did a mainstream book, like the GI Joe mixed with public domain mythology stuff. Michael Dishy, the Cheyenne dog soldiers were legitimately scary looking. Oh yeah, yeah. They do rituals before a big battle, and they were people. They would do various levels of shit where they're like, what do you call it? Where they're like really not paranoid, but just really like skeptical, superstitious. So I was thinking. In Japan, that's called the fastball special. Speedball is a speedster character. The moon cycles affect the tides. It probably inspired all kinds of pagan night kinks and drugs and dancing and whatnot. Yeah, yeah. There was one part of there's a movie by Ridley Scott that about knights and it's about one knight who like commits rape basically, and then there's kind of a what do you call it, a trial for him, and it ends with the two knights. The knight that got like besmirched and him fighting to the death, kind of for the honor of the woman who the woman doesn't like either of them, which is kind of funny. Like some of it's almost like dark comedy or whatever. It's like, but that movie's honestly not bad. It's like pretty good, but it is like of the time, and it came out right during Me Too shit. But it's Ridley Scott, and he's like actually pretty good filmmaker. But that movie had some interesting stuff. Like I'm like, are they doing this on purpose? But it was like the king was like living a life like Hollywood, or not even the king is. I think he might have been the king, but maybe it was like just the local lord basically. And he was just living like straight up Hollywood, uh, deal with the devil type life of hedonism, and he was having like orgies every night. He just invite his buddy in. He was like randomly, and they would just start having orgies together. Like, ooh, if that's what the Middle Ages are like, that's like kind of hardcore. Sergeant Slaughter finds the Spear of Destiny. Are you guys for real? All that's all like if you say it all in one sentence, it doesn't even sound like GI Joe. It sounds awesome though. Yeah, like you got to disperse those stories in between hundreds of episodes or issues, and then it gets peppered in. But if that's all it is, because you could do those versions of stories like for like Ninja Turtles too. Like that'd be kind of cool. Like the turtles find Excalibur, the turtles find the Spear of Destiny, etc. Lob Lobovicious. I watched Dust Till Dawn the other day, and the concept of an old Aztec pyramid disguised as a bar for ancient vampires is always thought provoking. Tarantino gets it done. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I kind of forgot about that. That's cool. There's an episode of one of the later Transformers where you find out what happens to G.I. Joe because Cobra Commander is in an episode of Transformers. Oh, that's cool. Speedball is what got John Belushi. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my sketch over here is looking okay. Maybe I will sketch just for a little bit longer. Try and finish this one. It'll be like that. Is it 2? Like that. She's got like a mullet. That girl. Yeah, you know, Wolf of Wall Street. They almost had like what you could almost count as like rituals, where they're throwing midgets to see how far they could throw the midgets. A midget throwing contest. So I could almost put that in my comic. I was trying to think if there's any movies to watch for research for inspiration. Like, okay, you're gonna try and invent your own pagan ritual. Step 1, make a list of all possible rituals of what you'd even want to get done. This one, I think it'll just be like winter solstice kind of. So it'd just be a big old party with a bunch of sacrifices, maybe. It would be kind of weird to have like a ritual be like all the rituals. My ritual is every ritual. Jenner Jack says mud wrestling. See, if I had the, I will almost, maybe we can do a little brainstorm. Let me see if I open a little whiteboard. All right. I'm going to write down mud wrestling. Seriously, though, like, so that, I don't know about ritual, but definitely for like a festival that could go in there. It's in. It's in Jeddah Jagga. Midgets are in. And then types, there's like blood, ritual. What else? I don't know. There's like marriage. There's like blessing fertility. Sacrifice. The other thing that comes up actually in some of the mythologies is contests. There's a lot of contests, which is funny because contests are like, it's like there is no problem, so they create a problem. Like sports, it's just like God's playing sports. It's like who can eat the most, and that's actually kind of awesome. There is a thing that came up from it too, is that if they're doing these like contests and stuff, hold on, if I think of it, I'll tell you guys. Ken Jackman, my post didn't make it clear. G.I. Joe was the winner. That's why Cobra Commander is arms dealer. Oh, I was going to say, yeah, it doesn't portend well for the G.I. Joes if Cobra's the one who shows up in the future show. Yeah, like a cleansing ritual. That's true. Yeah, cleansing. Cleansing ritual. That could almost count as like, what's it called when you have to kick the demon out? I don't know. Festivus. Oh yeah, the other thing that came up from is this old mythology is that these gods, it seems like a lot of them, they are not like kings. Like kings is like for humans, and gods are like they don't even care about. It's like kings is like still little stuff to them. They do not care about king stuff. So like one god will show up, he'll actually be the cook for the king. So he's like, and he's the biggest god in the whole universe. He's like the equivalent of Odin or whatever. And he's just cooking for a king. It's because he doesn't freaking care because he's freaking huge. So that a lot of them they do like undercover boss type stuff. I'll write that down. Undercover boss. Uh, above kingly stuff. Narwhal, do you think viewers readers find tropes tiresome now? I guess it depends. I'm trying to I think I like tropes pretty much straight up. And then I have a little bit more of a negative association with cliches. But tropes, I'm like, hell yeah. The other thing that's fun is to try and think of subgenres and then kind of invent them. Like, oh, that's almost like a subgenre. Like one subgenre, it could be like pagan festival subgenre. And then there's like The Wicker Man. There's that new movie that came out a while ago. I forget what that one's called. But there's like these movies you could do that are kind of like that. There's head exploding subgenre. So anytime a character's head explodes, which there's only like 10 movies like that. And maybe there's more, but you can think of 10 movies where someone's head explodes. That's your list. This is the subgenre of head exploding movies. And you can just be like, oh, it's like kind of fun for inspiration. Like, I want to make my head exploding movie. You can turn Star Wars into a head exploding movie. They could do that with the Force, sort of. It's like almost a head exploding movie, but it's not quite because that's like the same power that's kind of like is like in that like what do they call it, like telekinetic type stuff, the psychotronic powers. That's almost like the Force. Daily, my favorite subgenre is paranormal investigator. Runner up is archaeology adventure. Yeah, archaeology adventure is a fun. That's like, yeah, you would say it and you'd be like, well, you know, people would recognize like this is like Indiana Jones or whatever. But um, Tomb Raider is awesome. The Mummy. There's plenty of examples. They're a lot of fun. That would actually kind of fit in some exploring a little bit of the Aztec stuff too, if you wanted to do that. I guess, yeah, then like the difference between a trope and a cliche, like, because as soon as I say that, you can think of ideas that are like been done or whatever, like a little bit more like a mummy style or whatever, like, oh, you uncovered a tomb and uncovered a curse, and now you got to deal with the problem. That's like a little borderline cliche, but the actual tropes within it can still be kind of fun. Like just a curse in general is like actually still pretty awesome and fun. And a tomb is pretty fun too. So I don't know, a tomb and a curse. What even kind of plays with some of that stuff is even like Sherlock Holmes. If you have like your character do enough stuff, then they kind of get that feeling where they could kind of do anything. You're like, yeah, Sherlock Holmes could like find Excalibur, blah blah blah. Uh, that's a little bit. It's not Excalibur, but there's a kind of cool story about a sword regarding Joan of Arc. But I think she didn't find it, which kind of takes away from it a little bit. She sent a letter to someone, but I think if that's true, that means there's almost like proof that it was kind of legit. At least, so because she claimed that God gave her a vision and told her there was a sword behind an altar in a certain church, behind like the main altar, and and that they went there found it, there was a sword, and they brought it to her, and that's the sword she used in battle. And it's one of those things I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's like sort of real, but it's like maybe she hid it first and then knew where it was, sent it to the letter. But she claimed she didn't know. She claimed just God told her. I don't really think she was like a con artist. And she met a con artist later on as like another girl was doing the same thing, but being a con artist. And Joan of Arc was like, because the girl said she got visions from God, and Joan of Arc's like, well, when? And she's like, well, it's at night. And Joan of Arc's like, well, can I stay the night with you? And because I want to talk to him too if he shows up. And she's like, sure. And so they spent the night together. And then Joan of Arc waited up as long as she could. And then eventually fell asleep because she's like, this is dumb. This girl's faking or whatever. But then the next morning she wakes up and she tells the girl, she's like, I think you're faking because that God never came, obviously. And the girl's like, nuh-uh, he came right after you fell asleep. Ken Jackman, some of my favorite anime content is reincarnated in another world, anime farming life in another world. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, what they call it isekai a lot of times, sort of. That is a good one. Batman does find the Grail in a Chuck Dixon comic. Cool. It came up in an Indiana Jones one too. I'm sure there's plenty of times it might come up, but um, I'm doing some stuff with it that I'm excited about. That's a little bit um a little bit like outside the box kind of. It's kind of fun. But I don't know. We're getting close to an hour. I might wrap up here pretty soon in a second. What else for pagan ritual? I feel like the types of ritual for what you'd want, like what want? You want like good harvest. You want good luck in battle. You want healthy babies, whatever. You might want like to like I don't know if you like want. Well, then you can get down to like the more ghoulish, borderline quote unquote satanic stuff. Is like if you want power, you want to pass like a big demon into the real world. You want wishes granted. Kind of sketchy stuff like that. There could be rituals for that. That could be cool if there's a little bit of a dealio going with it. Beer. I think I'm gonna. Oh, Billy's gonna start barking again. I'm gonna end the stream though, guys. But yeah, good little stream. Just brainstorming some ritual stuff, talking some mythology stuff. I'm gonna keep going down these rabbit holes. I'll report back. It is fun picking out the things that are like I wouldn't have guessed, but they're like, oh, that is funny. Like it's funny. It's like all undercover boss stuff. It's like the mythology with the gods. Undercover boss. Cool. I'll see you guys later though. Here.